I hear people say pretty regularly, if it weren't for other people, I'd be enlightened already, or I'd be able to maintain this state of awakened consciousness full time. And the Ram Dass quote, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family, really ties in well with that. And I see that quote a couple of different ways. But ultimately, if people have established a way of seeing you that's inflexible, so maybe you have a friendship that's based on complaining together or gossiping or one shared interest. And now, as you're letting go of old beliefs, of delusions, of opinions, you now no longer take pleasure in talking about other people badly. And you don't need to kind of air your grievances in the same way that there's a kind of addictive quality to venting. And we also get the sense from it that we're bonding with somebody where it's really just based on that one thing. And if you let go of that, you will find some relationships kind of dissolve. And I've heard them called situationships. So if the relationship is only based on one sort of situation, one circumstance in your life, if that one circumstance changes, that relationship easily just dissolves. But also with regard to sort of real-time noticing of this. So we're with people and we notice that the mind is kind of running the show. There's just this automatic playing out of a story. And in the middle of the conversation, we're thinking, how did I even get here? I don't even want to be talking about this. How do I get out of this from this point? And that's just more mind content. This is how the mind stays around so long. This is why it's so cunning and evasive. And that's okay. We see these situations as being kind of the number one or number two or whatever hindrance in our lives to awakening or to sort of completing this process, as we tend to think of it, of awakening. We say, oh, if only I just became a monk, it would be figured out. And the problem with that is these are like untested situations. If you're completely alone and you have become enlightened in that way, it's most likely going to fall apart as soon as you encounter another human being. So it's not a real thing. I think this is something that can kind of be glossed over at times. And I think this is also a situation where having a direct experience of like a very decisive awakening might limit context or understanding of a more gradual situation. So for me, the situation's been gradual, and it looked for quite some time like me being a lot less happy. And in some ways that was true. At different times, that was true. A lot of change was kind of always seeming to continuously be happening. And with that, there's a quote somebody told me earlier that's often said in AA: when you stop people pleasing, people won't be pleased. And I love this. It's so simple and quick, and it made so much sense around what was happening to me as I was still identified with the me. And I'm thinking, all these great things are happening. Nobody seems to care. People want me to still be bending over backwards and having all this anxiety and not sleeping well and all these things. But ultimately, people can only meet us from where they are. And another way of saying that is people are only seeing us, seeing the change that is occurring on the surface based on the stories in their minds, which, as we know from investigating our own minds, the mind is full of delusion. Every single thought we think it cannot be verified. There's only one thing we really know. And when we expect for people to have a kind of prescribed reaction to this thing that's very rarely experienced, we are kind of missing the fact that most people have relationships that they expect to fulfill a need for them. So if you have been the gossip person, or you're the person people vent to, and you suddenly don't want to be that, or maybe you're the butt of the joke and you just aren't going to be that. People will full on just stop talking to you because it's so uncomfortable to address the feelings that are going on within. And a lot of resistance can come up with that. So this is where empathy of another person's situation is really helpful as we continue on, as well as humility. Just because we're going through this process, I think a lot of people going through processes like that, this start to think, and it may be just subconscious, a subconscious belief that I'm better because I'm going through this, and other people should have to act the way that I act. And this is just really, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing as what the mind is resisting. It is us seeing the world through a limited lens and still expecting to be able to predict what's going to happen, and then being upset when it's not predictable. So when we do go into this process, we need to be fully aware that people are leaning on other people and expecting other people to save them left and right. And it is okay to encounter resistance to this when we realize fully that we are the love we seek. When we realize fully that we are the love we seek, it feels like this. We no longer place conditions upon our relationships. And so when people act in a way that in the past we would consider to be disappointing, we no longer see it that way because we don't hold those expectations. We no longer depend on other people for our happiness and our love and our connection. And in that way, we free ourselves from any supposed impediment on this journey.